that is a really important reason to be here. You know, here's why I think that, and we kind of laugh at it a little bit, but I think that this is a super important way to connect what's happening at these kind of events to the classroom. And it also draws in some of you who might not have otherwise contemplated some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. And you might find yourself surprised by, oh, I needed to know that. And that's my hope tonight. So, to get us kicked off though, I'm going to, can I jump on and try to start that? Did it block out? We have a short video clip, and then our panelists are going to introduce themselves by telling you a little bit about themselves, and we're going to move into, about half the evening is a presentation, the other half is our conversation together. So, sit tight, let's do this.
I buy something I want, and then hope that I can pay for it, right?
No. You make sure you have money, then you buy it.
Oh, then you buy it. But shouldn't you buy it before you have the money?
No.
Why not?
It's in the book. It's only 1 page long. The advice is priceless, and the book is free.
Wow, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, we can put it on our credit card.
Okay. Well, as Jamie said, my name is Pam Macias, and my role here on campus is that I am the Director of Financial Aid, which really what I'm tasked with is I have to make sure that we are awarding all the federal, state, and institutional aid at the university fairly, equitably, that we're following all the laws and regulations. But my reason for being here is really more about my experience as a parent, because before I went to work here, all 3 of my kids went to Point Loma and graduated from Point Loma. And you know, it would be nice if I had done it the other way around, but my youngest daughter graduated in 2006. She was my 3rd child that was here. And I went to work here in July of 2006. So I have a different perspective, and I think I have a passion for parents and for students, because I know what it was like for me to go through and face that, trying to figure out to have each of my kids figure out a way to pay to come to the school that they wanted to come to too. And I really believe that that is my ministry as well as my job. And why I wanted a chance to kind of come and share some of the things that I get questions about, or I get to talk about in my role at the school, both with current students, prospective students, their parents, and wanted to be here tonight to share some of that information with you. And I have Kara working in our office too, and I will let her introduce herself and kind of tell you why she's here.
So my name is Kara. I am a loan assistant in financial aid. So pretty much I process all of the loans. So I see the amount of debt that students do go into, and I can kind of connect, I think, with students because I also did the same thing. I came to Point Loma, not really thinking about the cost, but just kind of knowing that it's where I wanted to go and it was going to be okay and I was going to do it. So I came to Point Loma. I knew vaguely what the cost would be, but I never thought about paying it back. Or if I thought about it, it was just kind of in vague terms, never like, oh, this is how much money it's going to take every month to pay back my loans. So as I started coming here, I kind of realized like it was adding up. So I was able to graduate early, worked really hard to graduate early, and then whenever you have extra money, I learned the importance of sending that back to your loans, so you can lower the loan principal over time. And I think what I really realized is that the cost wasn't going to scare me away from Point Loma because I wanted to come here and it was the best decision I made in my entire life. But now you're at a point when you do start repaying your loans where you kind of have to realize what's important and what do you need to budget so that you can afford to have that as part of your life. So I don't want to encourage anybody to get into debt, but I do want to be an encourager for people who already have debt as a way that there are ways you can handle it and there are resources for you. So at the end of the presentation, we'll go over some resources. Hopefully, that'll be a helpful thing for other students. And I guess my position in at SFS is processing the loans, so I kind of see it on that side too. And I think that my personal experiences translate into my job as well. So kind of just really not wanting students to get into too much.
My name is Jared, and I'm here because I'm attracted to any time people are willing to have vulnerable and honest conversation in the church about tough topics. I absolutely love it. That's my favorite place to be, is in the tension where people gather and will be honest with things that they struggle with, will confess or will wrestle with tough issues. It's just my favorite part of being in the church. If it didn't exist, I probably wouldn't be in the church still. And I think I graduated from here in '05, and I have a lot of friends that even in the last 8 years, some have gone bankrupt and filed bankruptcy, which I never would have thought was possible to do in 8 years. I have friends that really resent the debt that they have taken from this place, and I have friends that love it and it's the best decision that they've ever made. And so for me, working with students, it's really interesting to be with them as they're making these decisions. And then now I've been around in the ministry long enough to see the students go off to different schools and graduate, and then watch now how they've reacted to that debt and to living with it. So I believe in discussing it because I think it's one of the areas that is tied very closely to our faith and our heart, and we don't often connect those two things. They just kind of get compartmentalized. And so I love this night where we get to bring it together. So I'm excited to watch and learn even through the stats and the things that these ladies can present, and then I'm excited to kind of open up the Bible side of it and kind of hopefully draw in some scriptures that maybe we've heard back into this like real life applicable kind of conversation. So that's why I'm here.
One of the things I appreciate about Kara is I believe God really brought her in this role where she's working with students because she has such a heart for trying to help students understand what they're doing and the decisions they're making, parents, the decisions that they're making, and will oftentimes come to me and say, I'm concerned about this. There is a level that I'm hoping that that I can help you understand about what we can or can't do even as a school, as a financial aid department, before we even get into a deep discussion about it. And also, debt in general. I am here to tell you, especially as a parent of students who 2 of the 3 are paying back their student loans right now, and they are in the group that would say they are glad that they came here. They would have not changed their mind about it, but they have to accept then that decision and the debt that they got into and knowingly got into. But what I'm hoping is that you will understand that for me, I wish everybody did not have to borrow a dime to go to school. And in fact, the philosophy of our department is reflected in our packaging policies of the way we award aid, and that is that the first thing we do is try to award every penny of free aid that's available. That's what we look for first. Federal, state, whatever it is that you can be eligible for, and then we start chipping away at the rest. But there are a couple of things that I've found in my contacts with students and parents that they don't understand about the things that we are limited by, and also some of the other decisions that are made that have an impact when you're coming to the school and trying to make a decision about how do I pay for it, what do I do, and so I'm going to try to skim through these pretty quickly, but feel free. This is really a conversation. I really don't want it to be a lecture. So if you've got a question or you want to ask something, just feel free to jump in. So the first thing that I don't think people really realize is who's supposed to pay your school bill. You would be surprised, and I am in this group, where I thought that my kids were really smart. One ran. And I thought that if they just worked really hard, that they would just be scholarshiped and they would not have to pay to come to Point Loma. I honestly believed that as a parent. They were so brilliant and everybody would want them. And I was kind of surprised when they got here that it didn't happen that way. There were a lot of really brilliant people. So is it you? Is it your parents or guardians? Is it the school? Well, one of the driving forces is what the Department of Education thinks about who's supposed to pay for your education. And their philosophy is the primary responsibility for paying for school is your family. And so all the laws come from that. They believe you're supposed to pay for it, and then we'll help you if you can't pay. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you have filed a FAFSA? Okay, that's a really good sign. I'm glad to see that because that is how they measure what you're able to pay or not able to pay. And honestly, I tell families I never knew whether to laugh or cry when I got the results of it, because it was always saying I could afford to pay much more than I thought I could for my kids' education. And I take responsibility there, my parents saved for college education for their children. I didn't. It never even occurred to me that I should be putting money away for my kids to go to school. I thought the school should pay for it because they earned it. So financial aid is you paying for it and then the government helping you pay for it. And this is the formula that we have to award financial aid by. You take the cost of attendance, and that is your tuition fees, room and board, anything you get billed for, and then you do the FAFSA, and they give you kind of a score, an expected family contribution, and that's based on your family's income, your assets, all kinds of things, and then there's this formula they run it through. And then they take that away from the cost of attendance, and that is unmet need. And we are permitted to award you any need-based aid up to that amount, and we can't go over it. So that means if you're awarded more need money than what the government says you can have, then we have to take some of it away. Now, that I didn't understand. If I have need and my kids have worked to get scholarships and they get need-based money, then why would I have to have that taken away? I want to try to pay for the entire education. And that is a really simplified version of it, but I just want you to know that that is the guiding force of how we're allowed to award aid. Some of it doesn't make any sense, and I'll be the first one to say that. And that unmet need can be filled with scholarships. Free money is good. Free money is actually great. Grants, free money, great. Federal work study, not so bad. You may have to work for some of it. And then loans, which is the last option for us. That is the least of what we want you to do to help pay for the school. Okay, so you might say, here's one of the arguments I get. If I went to a public school, a public college, as opposed to coming to Point Loma, then I probably wouldn't have to borrow as much. And actually the facts show that that's not what happens. What happens, and this is from the, directly from one of the federal reports and the data that has to be provided by schools, it shows you that there's very little difference in the average indebtedness, both in California and nationally, from what you're going to see as the average at Point Loma. So for whatever reason, even if you go to a state school, students are borrowing money to pay for their education, maybe for their living expenses. I'm not really sure what it is, but there isn't a lot of difference, and it actually the gap now between state schools and private is getting smaller and smaller. So is there good debt? Actually, I would say I don't think there's any good debt. I would rather not owe money to anybody for anything, but I didn't live by that myself. I did not manage my own debt. I didn't manage my own credit debt. If my kids called and said they needed money to pay their school bill, and if I didn't have it, I just charged it, got it to them to solve the immediate problem because I didn't like a crying daughter on the phone. And so that just became my debt then and my worry about it. So I can't say I have all the answers, although now at my age now I get it and I'm much better at it. But that's because I'm getting close to retirement. So what I would ask yourself is there good debt and bad debt? And I hope we're going to see that actually there is good debt and bad debt. So the first thing is you want to ask, am I going to get any return on my investment? So college education is still a good investment, and I tried to give you recent information because you don't really care what happened in 2009. At least I don't. I doubt you do. So this is just from November 2012 that it says even in the recession, students that have a college degree still do better than somebody that doesn't. Whether it's employment, employability, the facts are even in a bad economy, you having a college degree is still better for you than not having a college degree. So that shows that you being here and working towards that goal is still a good thing, a good decision. It does increase your individual's potential for earning. This gives you some statistics that I'll be happy to provide the PowerPoint to Jamie rather than going through and reading all of it. But the one, college graduates still earn 50% more than young adults who completed only high school. You probably would guess that anyway. And 22% more than did those with associate degrees. And that is a current statistic. So it still pays to get a college degree. Oh, sorry, it went too far. The median income for young adults with a bachelor's degree was $45,000. And with an associate's degree, it was $37,000. And this is just still in the last year. So you still can make more with a four-year degree. So let's compare it to other debt. Does credit card debt increase your ability to earn more? Well, it may feel good, but let me show you the impact on it. There's this credit card interest calculator or a debt payoff calculator. So what we're going to do is associate it with student loan debt. So if you take $26,000, let's say an average amount that a student might borrow by the end of their 4 years, the average credit card interest rate today was 14.95. Now that is taken right from federal data, but we all know you can get it lower rates. But that's the 14.95 is the average. And you do know that if you miss a credit card payment, that your interest rate can shoot way up. Even if it was 5%, it can suddenly become 25%. Just want you to know, make sure you make your payments. If you take 10 years to pay it off, like you do a student loan, it'd be a $418.68 monthly payment due, $24,241 in interest charges over 10 years, or $50,241 to pay off. And what will you have at the end of 10 years? A really good feeling. You'll have no debt on the credit card side, but you don't gain anything by having a credit card debt. Now, you may think, I would never have $26,000 in credit card debt. I'm here to tell you there are students on campus that probably do already. It's a really easy trap. And one thing I am really grateful for is this campus doesn't allow credit card solicitors to come on campus at games and try to get you to get a credit card. You go to a state school, they're on the state school campuses trying to give you free credit cards.
For a towel or something.
Yes,
Like a free
yeah,
towel.
get a towel, get a credit card, and it's a really easy trap to fall into. So that is one good thing about Point Loma is they are not going to set that up where you're gonna fall into that trap. Okay, car loans. My husband sells cars for a living, so this is an easy one for me. If you purchase a car for $26,000, average student loan debt at the end of 4 years, what's the car worth 4 years from now in 2017? So you buy it brand new, $26,000. Well, it loses $16,415 in value by the end of that 4 years. So you're going the wrong way. And you probably know that if you've ever bought a car, that the minute you drive it off the lot, it already has lost value. That's why my husband sells used cars. So just remember that. And the temptation to get a brand new car when you graduate, just really think about this. The minute you drive it off the lot, it's already lost value. So you might want to think about just getting a used car or taking public transportation or using one of the little, what do they call the cars that, not smart cars, zip cars. Okay, next one. All right, here are student loan facts, just so you know kind of what the general population is. Nearly 20 million Americans attend college each year, close to 12 million or 60% borrow annually to help cover costs. There's roughly somewhere between 902 billion and 1 trillion in total outstanding student loan debt right now. 864 billion is outstanding federal student loan debt, while the remaining 150 billion is in private student loans, not even the federal loans. Nationally, student loan debt now exceeds credit card debt. It even, for the first time in history, exceeds mortgage debt. For your parents buying their home, student loan debt now exceeds that. And in 2011, first-time home buyers fell to the smallest percentage of total home purchasers since 2006. So your generation can't even afford to buy a home. Even if you could afford to, you're probably not buying one. So this is a chart that was provided by the Consumer Credit Panel and Equifax that shows what's happening. The red one is the student loan debt, has now surpassed other forms of debt. So this isn't just a Point Loma issue, this is a national issue. So how do you fare? This is averages for Point Loma students. The 2012 undergraduate class who graduated between July 1st, 2011 and June 30th, who started at Point Loma as a first-time student, so they were here their entire career. The average per undergraduate borrower cumulative principal, excluding private loans and parent loans, almost 60% graduate with an average debt of $23,760. Okay? That's my daughter, right there, right about that mark. I think she was actually about 26,000. She is right now paying about $175 a month in student loan payments. And what we told our kids was, it's gonna be like driving a car or buying a car you're never gonna drive. And if you're okay with that, then this is a great investment because it's actually better than buying a car, so. More telling, this is including private loans. 59% of that same population have an average debt of $31,851. And a word of caution here, some of you may be in this boat. We have students that go out to private lenders and get private loans before they take federal loans. And we can't stop you. If you go to Wells Fargo and get a private student loan that is at a higher rate of interest with no protections in it, and they're eligible, we have to certify that loan. We have to take it. And so Kara's job is she tries to advise you before you get to that point and say, we really want you to think about this because that is not the best way to go right now. Oh, sorry, I thought there was a question. Okay, how do you compare nationally? We're still a little bit under the average student loan indebtedness at $23,760. Nationally, it's about $26,000, a little bit over. The default rate is something we're very interested in, especially as a Christian college. I feel a heavy weight here are the students that borrow money at Point Loma paying back their loans. Because students who don't pay it back, it will have an effect on the students that come behind you. Because if we have a bad default rate, they will no longer allow us to get federal aid. So I look at it as a much bigger picture. The good news is we're in pretty good shape. The 3-year official calculation for last year was 3.1% of our students default on their student loans, means they're not paying them back. The comparison to other private nonprofits, they're at 7.5, the same group, and nationally it's at 13.4. There are schools that have 40% default rates. 40% of the students don't pay back the loans that they get out. Now you tell me who is going to suffer the consequences of that. That is federal debt that they're not paying back. Sooner or later, it's going to have a trickle-down effect on all of us.
So there's a few different things. Every year, our office does offer the named scholarship application. It just closed last week, actually. But if you look forward to that next year, apply for scholarships. Not just our scholarships. Every department gets scholarships. I remember not thinking that I was ever going to get these scholarships, and then when you apply and you get it, it really encourages you to apply again. So even if you don't think you're going to get it or too many people are going to apply, I just really encourage you to apply and give it a good shot. Look for scholarships outside of our campus. There's all kinds of obscure scholarships that exist. You just have to kind of seek them out. I'd also encourage you to find out the name of your student account advisor. We have 4, sometimes 5 really amazing student account advisors, and they're there for you as a resource. Go in and talk to them about some different ways that you can be paying your bill. And even if it comes down to choosing a loan, they can help you choose a better loan for you or make a wise decision as far as what to choose. So also, do any of you know what you owe? And there are ways that you can find out. Currently, if any of you are attending loan exit counseling, I'm giving out printouts to students with all of your federal loan debt, but you can actually access that on your own as well. So you can go to this website. It's called nslds.ed.gov, and we have it on our resource sheet. It stands for the National Student Loan Data System. And you can always look at how much you owe at any time. And that way, I would kind of encourage you maybe every year, if you're thinking about taking out a loan, go back and look at that and see what is that going to mean for your future. What would a monthly payment amount be with the amount of debt that you currently owe before you take on additional loans.
Can I just ask how many of you that are going to be here next semester did the named scholarship online? Okay, that's encouraging too. Even if it's another $2,000 in free money, if you don't do the application, you don't get the $2,000, you don't get the $1,000, you don't even get the $500. So you have, all it is maybe 10 minutes, and now it's too late this year because it's closed. So we send emails, we try to tell students about it, but you have to take some responsibility. We're trying to help you get free money, and so, but we can't make you fill out these applications.
What percentage of eligible students apply for that, do you know,
Ugh.
roughly?
In a good year, we have 400 students apply. And there's probably 100 awards. So your odds are really, really good. Especially if you're going into ministry, the areas that you don't want large student debt, there is so much endowment money for students that want to go into ministry. And so it breaks my heart when they're not the ones applying for that free money. So it's, anyway, okay.
Okay, I'm going to take a look at a scenario. Say you find out at the end of the semester that you have a credit balance on your account, and you think it'd be really awesome, take that credit balance out, go live off it for the summer, maybe travel, buy a car. I just want to show you some things that maybe you should think about before you do that, and what a credit balance that's created from a loan can actually do. So if this is as if you're a freshman. So you're a freshman, and at the end of the 12-13 school year, you have a $4,000 credit balance from an unsubsidized loan. So the unsubsidized loan starts accruing interest at 6.8% as soon as it disperses onto your student account. So it's been accruing all this time. So you take it out, $4,000, you just go in and get a check. We are obligated to give that to you. In fact, if you don't request to have it returned to the government, depending on how a calculation is run that we have to do, chances are we have to send you a check for that. And you may not know that that check really isn't free money. It's actually law that we would have to send you that check. So you take out this $4,000 as a freshman, and your loan has already begun to accrue interest. So by the time you graduate in 4 years, that $4,000 loan has accrued $896 in interest. So now you're starting off with a loan that is $4,896, and you're about to go into repayment. So another thing I want to point out is that when you go into repayment, all of the interest that's accrued over time is going to add on to the principal of your loan, and that means that you're suddenly being charged interest on a higher amount. So if there's any way that when you're taking out loans, if you can pay off even the interest that's accruing, you're going to save yourself. You're going to really save yourself money in the long run, because if you keep that loan of $4,896 and you pay it off in 10 years, which is a standard repayment plan for any loan, then you are having a total payoff of $6,762. So that loan just added an additional $2,762 in interest, when you could have sent back that $4,000, and now instead you would owe the $6,762. So it is just a really good thing to remember. Like, if you have some extra money, it may be really nice to go out and have it, but it's probably going to save you if you send it back and just kind of live a little bit simpler for the meantime. It's going to help you out in the long run.
And maybe this is superfluous, but maybe it's just because I've been slammed with taxes the last couple of years. Would have been nice to just have someone say when I was still a student that the numbers that they keep throwing around are like money that isn't, like that $500 that could be given to you in scholarship money isn't taxed money. So if you're going to go raise $500 cash to turn in when you're out of school, you actually have to earn like $850 because you're going to get taxed on it. So that's so much more money. So I see that $2,762 that they added, and I'm actually seeing like $4,000 because you're going to get taxed on what you earn. Does that make sense? So if you're going to go get a job for $12 an hour, you have to earn $4,000 extra above what you could have just taken and given back in. Does that make sense? Like, when you see numbers from now to the rest of your days living in the United States of America, see the numbers and think, but I actually have to earn 25%, 30% more than that. That's just the way it breaks down. So, yeah. Okay.
So again, if you already have debt, or if you want to prevent yourself from getting into a lot of debt in the future, a few things you can do. First, pay off the interest on any unsubsidized student loans or any private loans that you currently have. And if you're unsure of what kind of loans you have, you can always contact us in our office or go to the NSLDS website, which again is on the resource sheet, because I know that acronym is a little bit tricky. You can also create a spending plan or a budget. It is pretty crazy once you start writing everything down, see how it adds up. I know I was surprised myself, and you have to kind of see what's left over and what can you actually afford, so that way you know what kind of debt you can afford to have. Maybe think about what your major, what's an average starting salary for your major. Think about that as you're taking out these loans and learning how to repay them. Another really good thing you can do is develop an emergency fund and a freedom fund. So the emergency fund, if you can start saving now, have a little bit of money set aside in case anything happens, in case you need to get a new car, anything like that. And that way, this is something that you can use throughout your whole life, not just now, not just while you're repaying a loan, but really for your entire life, kind of live knowing that you have a little bit set aside so that you don't have to get a credit card to pay off an emergency. Another one is a freedom fund, and that's also really good because we all do want to be free. That's what this whole night is about. We don't want to be slaves to debt. We don't want to be slaves to our wants and our needs. If you have a freedom fund saved up, that way if you want to take that vacation, it's paid for and you don't have to regret that afterwards. We want to encourage you to start living debt-free. I think hopefully that's the theme that we'll kind of relay throughout the entire evening. And then lastly, just to wrap up our portion, is that we will have a resource sheet. It's going to list a bunch of different things separated like budget tips and loan forgiveness tips. I always encourage students, since loans are kind of my passion, it is my job, I like to know what kind of loan forgiveness options there are out there and what kind of repayment options, because the way that you choose to repay your loans is going to affect the total amount that you pay back. And if you can look out some obscure, neat, different kind of loan forgiveness options that are really out there for you, especially if you're going into ministry or different occupations, I just encourage you to do that, because it'd be really neat if you could get some of that debt forgiven as you go along. So thanks for your attention.
Yeah, I would say, and not to go way back into childhood, but I guess the ethic of like having a great work ethic was just pounded into me. My grandpa, who was an immigrant from Italy and like earned every penny kind of a thing, and saved everything and had scraps of metal in his garage in case he ever needed them for a project. I mean, he was just like a real borderline pack rat, use everything you got. And then my dad, workaholic growing up to the point of like heart attack, and so watching him when I was in 6th grade deal with what it means to overwork to provide for your family and then needing to pull back to be a part of your family really shaped me in a year where you're learning who you are as a 6th grade boy. And then for me, also I was raised with a family, a family of immigrants from Mexico, was my family's best friend growing up, and so watching Maurice and Isabel live and grow, and then spending a week with them every summer as they worked really hard for not a whole lot of money, really shaped what I think it means to be a human. And so I bring that to Point Loma, where the conversation coming here was, Jared, we have enough money for you to do a year. And that was with my money. Like our grandparents have saved your whole life since you were born. We've saved. You can do a year, and in your year there, you need to figure out how to pay for the rest of it. And so I feel like a lot of like the students that I work with go to school, and some of them are either in that boat with how am I going to make this work from the beginning, or they don't ever have to think about it. I feel like students, we really have this idea that like I'm going to a 4-year school, I'm owed 4 years. And I think that this idea of entitlement about what is owed to us is like a really slippery slope in the church and a lot of other areas. But so I came in with the perspective that I get a year. And so I wildly tried to figure out ways to make money. Like I joined the speech and debate team and did really well, and then got offered a scholarship and went, oh, that's not enough to stay here. Thanks, no thanks. And then I applied for RA as a freshman and got it for sophomore year. And that amount, combined with the amount of the jobs that I got on campus, and the jobs that I worked, 2 8-hour jobs, back to back every summer on the summers, made it so that I could stay here. And that's because I valued it. Like I was having those conversations with people in my life of, is this worth it? Is it worth this amount of time? Because it's costing me my summers and my, like, how much of life is worth this place? And so for me, it's been something I've always had be a conversation, and I'm astonished when it hasn't been a conversation for other people. Like, what do you mean? Like, I saw, this is so detailed. I saw a tweet today from a student that used to be one of my students who, as a freshman in college, is getting his first job of his life. And this is from someone who had a paper route when they were in 6th grade to earn money. You know, like, it blew my mind. I was shocked and disappointed in the system that we've bred, that we will give you this much, or you're entitled to this much. And so I love to have the conversation with students as early as possible, what you're owed, and what is the answer to that, and to hear answers and to break it down. And so it comes from there. That's where it's born from in me. Yeah, well, so this is, I don't know when this started to arise in me, and then it's so fun because you can just easily be dismissed now as like a hipster, or like, you know, like someone who
You got the beard, you got the
exactly
mustache.
Yeah, sure. What? Yeah. Just the idea that, and this if this is the idea that you take from tonight, I'd love to wrestle and have you punch back and push back on this, but this idea that you need to see yourself as a part of systems and decide how you're going to interact with those systems. Like, we are in a number of systems here. A lot you chose and a lot you didn't choose. And being in the United States, being in school that is Point Loma, the food that you eat, what's expected of you for a job or what's expected of you for a car. We've already used car as a number of times as an example, but I would challenge you, do you need a car? And then if we're going to talk about that, we need to talk about what does it mean to need. And I think this is a huge part that needs to be evaluated if you're going to call yourself a Christ follower. Because if you're not, you don't really need to listen to a whole lot of what I'm going to say, other than the fact that some of it still might be helpful to you because some of it's just good advice. But at the moment where you're going to claim like Christ as the Lord of your life, that needs to invade your, like, not only your self-worth, and like that's a whole nother night, but like then after that it should totally envelop your concept of what you're owed or what you need. And I think that then all of a sudden these ideas that we don't talk about, when was the last time you like really heard a good sermon on fasting in chapel, right? Like, I mean, these are the elements that attack need. Like, the reason we fast for a number of other reasons is because I can daily or weekly attack what I think I needed today. I needed food to exist. Well, no, I didn't. Like I needed a car. I needed those. What does it mean to need those shoes? You know, and as soon as we can attack that, you can really get down into some of these principles and see how you're going to really interact with systems. And just the idea that the economics of like being a human or being a soul that has a body, the fact that we live on this earth and interact with other souls that have bodies and we interact with the earth means that we're in this culture of exchange. So I am a consumer and I'm a producer. You cannot get around it. You can't. You're alive, you breathe, you are currently exchanging something with the earth to exist. So you have to see yourself as engaging this system as someone who's going to take a certain amount and you get to control some of what you take and you're going to produce and give back. And Sabbath economics says that, to boil it down like whole books, a table of books that are outside for you, into a paragraph, is that it's the belief that God has given us enough for all. That enough exists for all, that if we're living as it was intended, there will be no poor, there will be no rich, there will be kingdom. I mean, there will be what it was intended to be. And so much of what now people are waiting for, like golden ticket theology, like, well, if I die, then I'll get to experience heaven, and that is the kingdom on earth. And we're saying, no, that the kingdom of God on earth, like living it out on earth, is this living where I realize my interaction with people, and then I'm going to live in a way that brings grace and truth and freedom to people who are captive by that system. Is that an okay 2 paragraphs to sum up that system? Okay, so then our interaction then, shoot, fire away, pushback.
I mean, didn't Christ say you will always have the poor with you?
Yeah, but yes. So now not pushing back on you, but I think that gets, pushback on you. That gets used to excuse ourselves from having to interact with people that are broken. So then in response, aren't we supposed to care for the orphan and the widow? Aren't we supposed to be freeing the slaves? Aren't we so saying yes, they'll always be amongst us, I've only ever seen used as an excuse to not have to actually get uncomfortable. So really what I'm pushing at is the problem is that we're so equate Christianity with happiness or joy, but then our very shallow explanations of that equals comfort. So seeking happiness for you is comfort, is a vacation, is a hammock over I don't know what it is for you, but somehow we've let following Christ spill that image, that American dream, I'm comfortable and I'm happy, bleed or fuse itself to Christ following, which is the most evil thing ever. That's terrible. And so I appreciate that, but that's one of those things where we just are taking snippets and going yeah, people will always be hungry, so I can pay $35 for sushi with my friends, and people outside ask me for $1 and I feel bad and I don't give it to them because they might buy alcohol, right? That's what I do that. That's not you, that's me recently. These are the things that I'm struggling with. So, yeah. As soon as so this is why I believe that socialism and communism, all these people are, this is way too big, I should make it smaller. People for a long time have been grasping at ways to do community better. And I think that those attempts with titles, political titles that we put on them, will always fall short at the point where they're not Christ-based. They are humans trying to be the best humans possible. Which the first thing that's going to erode that is humanness. Like, as soon as you put everything in the middle and say, now everybody take what you need, every one of us is thinking, yeah, but it'd be nice to take 2 handfuls when I really need 1. Like, that is the essence of what we are. And the essence of what Christ is pick it up and figure out how much of it you can give away. And if we're all doing that, then God's got you. Like, and that bleeds into how you view relationships and people and what people are to you and the people who make your clothes and what my wife is to me. Like, it all boils down to how I'm viewing the dishes. Because if she exists to do the dishes, right? I'm not like that's a sexist example, but like if that person exists to please you or make you happy, then you're totally coming at that relationship with the wrong perspective. I exist to bring grace and healing and to empowerment to her, and how can I not just do that with the people I'm closest to or my best friends or the people who can give me back, but how do I do that with the people who offer me nothing back? Like that, the guy outside of Sushi Deli too offers me nothing back, right? But as a Christ follower, I literally exist on this planet to offer that same grace and love and peace to him that I do to Sophie or any of you or any of my kids or anybody, my parents. That's why Jesus' stuff about family is so great. You owe everybody the same thing. Before we get to that, your paragraph about how having our hope in a political system to fix the problems is just that's misguided. Like you've got way too much faith in what we'd be able to pull off. And if the church could be the church in some of these areas, we wouldn't have to give political names to things if the church was actually being the church in this area. So that's why I love having these conversations in the church, because the only language we have to discuss them with is language given to us from the outside of the church. So we have to use church language. So Sabbath is, simply put, with all the stories about Jesus and the Sabbath, it's just that after 6 days on the 7th day, that they would shut down, that you shut down everything. And this is a practice for you if you're really wherever you're at in your journey with Christ. If you want a season of life that will really push you, read about Sabbath and practice Sabbath. Like last year in March, I really got to where I was doing traditional Jewish shutdown Sabbaths, and it will change and open up what you view about faith and Christianity. Because the idea is that you shut down from sundown to sundown. The Jews did it Friday night to Saturday night. You pick any day that works for you is where I'm at. If you can get any Sabbath, great. But shut it down. Turn off your computers. Turn off your phones. There are Jews now that are still following it that have a box in their house where they open it up and everybody in the family has to put in their iPhones and they close it and they lock it and they don't open it till the next day or the next 24 hours later. Awesome. So what that does is it forces you to realize that you are a producer, but on this day you do not exist to produce things. You exist to abide in Christ. And so they would do that every week. So if that was your system every week, then that sets you up for every 7th year would be a Sabbath year, and they would forgive minor debts and release slaves, which is awesome. So that's every 7th year they would forgive debts up to a certain amount of money, and then release the slaves, which is awesome. And then every 50th year, so after 49, 7 cycles of the 7th year, the 50th year was the year of Jubilee, and they would return all land to original owners, free all slaves, and forgive all debts, major and minor. All debts. And so the word and the concept of Jubilee, I know has been discussed here in some articles read, but that's a radical concept as some people are trying to figure out ways to bring that back, because that goes against everything that we believe. I mean, every system, right or wrong, flawed or not, to say, I'm really, I earned it. I earned it. And then to have this year or this time in your faith or in your community where everything gets reset, you could just fly off the handle with, well, then why work in the first place? Or there'll be leeches on the system. Or if you're in year 48 and you're almost near year 50, all hell's going to break loose. Right? You get to wrestle with the messiness of ownage and people as commodities or property as a commodity that you control. And the reason it resets everything, and you can ask questions or push back, it resets everything because it reminds you that it's not yours in the first place. It's not yours. That you have been entrusted by God to manage what has been put around you, and a lot of us, it's a lot more than we even think it is. And then people are like, well, I earned it. And I'd say, well, no, you didn't choose to have a brain that functions the way it functions, or you didn't choose to be born in the family that you were born into, or to have limbs that function. One of my closest friends died of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and I watch his body erode, and he didn't choose that. So the fact that you can decide to work hard already presupposes that you have a body that allows you to work hard, which you didn't choose. So
there is some deep thinking going on around where debt has come from, how deeply it underlies the very substructure of all of life. There's this anthropologist, David Graeber, who's out of England, who wrote this Debt, the first 5,000 years. If you want a nice thing to put you to sleep, you know. But if you really are into the intellectual analysis of looking through history and seeing in what ways debt, actually he argues that debt precedes all money systems. We typically tell the story the other way around, that money systems then created credit systems, then created money, etc., or then created debt. But he argues that from the Hammurabi text, from the earliest written records that we have, some of the earliest written records we have, 6500 BC, are actually written records of debt systems that were in place. So it's a really interesting analysis. So let's bring this together and let's have some questions. So we've been talking debt on a theological scale. We've been talking your kind of debt, both the academic or the school debt and the credit debt. And so, you know, where do we sit now? How do we move forward with all of this? So maybe just across the three of you to open and allow people to ask questions. If you had a piece of advice, for current college students, either about to graduate or just entering, what would that piece of advice be given this conversation?
I think, sorry, it's going to sound really parental. I can't help that, I'm a parent. But I think to me, it would be to take responsibility now, to understand what you're doing, the decisions that you're making. Sometimes we will reach out to a student and try to advise them or talk to them about something that we're concerned about, and they'll tell us, no, my dad or my mom takes care of everything, and they won't even want to hear it. And that concerns me. That concerns me that even if you are blessed and your parent just writes a check and pays your whole school bill, I can tell you right now, it's not going to stay that way for all of your life. And this is a really good place and a really safe place to start learning and understanding and taking responsibility for kind of the decisions you're making and the decisions you're making.
It's hard to choose just one because I know there's basically a lot of things I could say, but I already did give my piece about lowering your loan debt, paying off interest, that kind of thing. So beyond that, I would definitely say live within your means as much as you can, within a budget. Kind of live simply. I really believe in delayed gratification. So I'm kind of going through this now in my life, and where if you don't get caught up in consumerism. If you need money to do something to help you actually live, use it for that. Don't use it for other purposes that aren't actually going to edify you.
One piece of advice would be fast one thing that you think you need every week, so go without it, and then give the money to somebody else, something else, somebody who actually has a need of it. It'll challenge you, it'll frustrate you, it'll loosen you up to giving in moments when you aren't expected to be asked for things, and it gives you a cushion to do that. I've heard great stories of friends that have a jar in their house that when guys in this house give up something, they put the money in the jar, and to when anybody in the house needs money, they have the freedom to go to the jar. And it's awesome. And that money is added up quickly because a lot of the times it's revealed to you that you really aren't in need that often to go to a jar, because you'll say, I really needed that, and you go to the jar and go, someone fasted me for have that, do I need that? Whatever you would buy, do I need that shirt? And you won't take money out, but then all of a sudden the money got pretty large and people would have cars break down or things get stolen, and this group of just 24-year-old guys were filling huge needs in their community, but only because they each gave up little stuff weekly. It was awesome. So find people who think like that and push you, and argue with them and do great stuff together. So. Are you trip sending a girl to Stanford whose parents didn't graduate from high school? I mean, it's like, find your passion and dig into their lives. We've been with her since she was a sixth grader, incoming sixth grader, and through her parents' divorce. And we, So that's just our neighborhood. So we're loving a kid from OB, and she got into Stanford, which had the lowest acceptance rate of any school in the country, 5.5% this year. So it's like, it would be, to look at that huge problem, like that's not everybody's issue that they're gonna catch on fire for and put their whole life into, but if it's yours, then do it to the best of your ability. And then find those, for us, it's just find those opportunities and love people. So we didn't set out a goal when she was a 6-year-old, like we're gonna get this girl into college. But by loving people, their passions emerge and then their gifts emerge. And I'm just as proud as her as I am kids that go to technical school or kids that get a job. Like they can't tell that there's any love difference from us because it isn't. So from my side of it, that's how we gotta love equally, and that's a part of it. And hard sometimes to do. So.
And I hope I'm understanding what your question is, but I would not want people to have to apologize that their families have come to the place where they can afford to send their kids to school. I don't think anybody should have to apologize for that. But I do think believe me, what we see is that it is truly a blessing to be able to do that. And so it's what you do with that blessing that has been passed on to you that I think is what really matters. And some of that comes out of what Jared's been talking about is whatever it is you give up or whatever you have been blessed with, it's really how you carry that forward then in your life too. There are lots of students on this campus whose parents don't have the money to pay for them to come here and who have to work 3 jobs to be able to be here and who are scratching for every penny. There are just as many that are like my kids where we made enough that they didn't get a lot of free aid, but we did make enough to write a check for it. And so from the very beginning, we had to make deals where this is how much we can help you with, but you're going to have to you cannot go on a trip this summer. You can't go on LoveWorks because you have to be earning money or whatever. And they gave up a lot to stay here and do what they were able to do. Wherever you're coming from, I think that the responsibility still is then how you take that forward. Whether you came with nothing and you end up with a degree and you go out and you're not making $45,000 a year, you're making almost nothing, or you're a missionary living on support. It's really just kind of where you go with that afterwards. I am thrilled that people have families that can write the check. I really do. It's all I was trying to say there was you need to be invested in that because it's a huge blessing, and so then what you learn from that about how big a blessing it is. I think then the responsibility is just to take that after you graduate.
I love, because we have admission counselors that are on my youth staff, and I love when Point Loma does the preview days or when they do the Encuentro, I see the shirt, like they make an effort to get students to see and to participate, and they work hard. Like that office works so hard to make it possible. And I've seen them for my students. I've seen them help kids that have, need help in the classroom and need help financially. Like I send multiple kids a year to Pam. Like you need to start in this office, including my sister-in-law who's going to come here hopefully in the fall. First conversation is, do you know financial aid? You need to go do this. And I wish, for as hard as I worked, I feel dumb. I wish I had sat where you were sitting as a senior in high school, really, or a freshman to say, man, I know I missed money. And how dumb do I feel I could have worked less or gone on a LoveWorks trip or something if I would have got some more money. So
I personally have felt animosity towards the blessed people that don't work in my earlier years going here, because I always had to work 2 to 3 jobs consistently, and I've paid for everything from the new sheets for moving into my dorm to now graduating. And it's not so much that I would have preferred we went to like a cheaper sushi place, but it was more just the perspective that a lot of the other students had. They just didn't understand where I was coming from, and if they just took the time to understand that some of these things aren't possible for me, that sense of like entitlement, if there was just more of a sense of humility, it would have been easier for me to recognize them as blessed rather than entitled. So I think it's just like how people communicate and listen to each other in the student body that would really help.
You have no idea how it thrills my heart, you even saying this. But I think what I would do is I need to ask you a question in return. Because we're not doing a good job of this. Because for the 6 years that I've been here, almost 7 years now, we have tried different approaches to reach out to students, to offer whatever we can think of to help students become more knowledgeable about debt, about how to pay for it, I mean, the opportunities that are out there. We've tried evenings in the residence halls, we've tried lunches, we've tried feeding students sushi, pizza, ice cream, anything, and nobody ever comes. We thought, okay, maybe it has to be student-led, so we're just gonna set our students loose and, let them put it together, decide what needs to be covered. Nobody came. And we're running out of ideas of what would make you as a freshman say, I would go to that. I want to come to that. What is it that would make you want to learn those things? Or what environment? Because we're there. We want students to come and see us. And I think our office has worked really, really hard to try to develop trust and relationships with students. We work with some people that deeply, deeply care about you guys and want you here and want you to be able to find a way to stay here if you really believe God's called you to be here. On the same token, we see students that we think, we're not sure this is a good choice for you, but we're going to be in it with you and try to figure out what the best solution is. What was it that triggered you to say, I need to learn this for myself? Or what would you come to? How do you want to hear that information?